And I'm going to mute all to start with, and hopefully all of you know how to unmute. So if you have a question or a comment. So we haven't had Jews in the news in a few weeks, and I just apologize for the schedule, just the way it is. And there's not going to be one next week because I have a shul board meeting after Minyan next Monday night. But then I was looking ahead, I think 3 weeks in a row in March, after the board meeting. Like the 10th, 17th, and 24th look good now to have Jews in the news those 3 weeks in a row. So I've been talking to some people, like I'm with our teens on Sunday morning. They come in for a religious school program twice a month. And for half of the time that they're in on Sunday morning, I'm with them. And either it's like an Ask the Rabbi session, or there are other topics that I bring up. And invariably, we talk about what's going on with Israel and Hamas. And they're quite educated about it and quite knowledgeable, which is good to know. And they happen to be pro-Israel too, which is good too. And one thing we talked about yesterday was the concept of revenge. And I'm going to share an article that came out from Daniel Gordis today in his daily email, Israel from the Inside. But I want to preface it by saying that I've said this from the Bima a couple of times since October 7th. You know, the monstrous, horrific evil that is Hamas, and the evil things that they have done are just indescribable, and and the evil that they perpetrate continues. In terms of how they release the hostages, those that are alive, and what they force the hostages to endure before they are handed over to the Red Cross with the propaganda, and then what they did with the Bibas family, with the mother Shiri, putting an anonymous Palestinian woman corpse into the casket when it was supposed to be Shiri herself. So the evil continues, and the level of evil is just beyond imagination. And so there is when Hamas attacked, and then to counterattack, the counterattack can't be is not technically revenge. It's acting in self-defense and then going on the offensive to try to defeat Hamas. So that's not necessarily revenge that I'm talking about. The revenge that I have in mind is that as a result of Hamas's evil, an element that the evil has done to us as a Jewish people, and to Israelis as well who experience the evil firsthand, is that it could cause Israelis and Jews around the world to feel that the normal sense of equanimity, of justice, of treating everyone with in a moral and ethical way, even our enemy, we're supposed to be treating fairly and acting reasonably toward. That what Hamas has done since October 7th, all the evil piling up one on top of each other, it causes us to perhaps not be as moral and ethical anymore, and tend instead to want to allow ourselves to imagine what it would be like to um, to enact revenge against them. So 2 weeks ago, when hostages were released and then Israel released Palestinian prisoners, Israel, or at least the Israel Prison Authority, forced the Palestinian prisoners who were being released to wear a t-shirt. Everyone to wear the same t-shirt. And Israel took a picture of this, and that had a Magen David on the back. It was a white t-shirt, and on the back of it was a Magen David, a Jewish star, and words in Arabic that said, we will not forgive, we will not forget." So when I saw that Israel had done that, that's that was the first time that I was thinking about this idea of revenge. Is it really appropriate for Israel to do that? Do we need to? What does it do to us when we stoop to the enemy's level, and that when we do something that can just prompt the other side to have another reason to hate us? Now, I read that the Palestinian prisoners, as soon as they were released and were dropped off wherever they dropped off, they burned those T-shirts. So certainly the message wasn't just for the Palestinian prisoners themselves and their families and friends who greeted them, but also to the world, the Arabic-speaking world, to understand what Israel is thinking. So, was it appropriate? Was it not appropriate? Okay, but also the Bibas family, Shiri, so that awful image that is everywhere on social media, on all news outlets, of her screaming in agony with her two children. She's holding on to her children for dear life as she's being transported away by Hamas terrorists. That is an image that everyone has in their mind about Shiri, Ariel, and Kafir, the three of them, and the fact that the two children are redheads. So there's a lot of images on social media of redheaded children, and the idea, past president of Shul, Mark Kaufman, had heard that, I guess so his wife teaches at Beth Tefillah Day School, an Orthodox day school, and I think in the Orthodox community, so I didn't get an email about this, there was something about wearing orange on Shabbat, something orange to relate to the redheaded Bibas children, and kind of in solidarity. So he was wearing an orange kippah. I had not heard about that, to try to express solidarity in that way. But we have that image of Shiri and holding on to her children for dear life. And Israel, the whole country, was holding out hope that they were still alive. So the fact that they were not still alive, the fact that the husband was survived captivity and being held hostage by Hamas, with the hope that he was going to be reunited with his wife and children, and then to have that hope shattered. You just can't imagine the despair for them. And then, of course, the sense of revenge that prompts in Israel to act against that. So I want to share what Daniel Gordis said about it today. And so this, I don't subscribe to his what's called Substack. his I don't pay money to do it. I just get a daily email, and you could read some. He offers some of it for free, and then there's other paid content. And there's enough here for free that I get the gist and what's important. So what you may have seen something going around is that so the older of the two children, the Bibas children, is Ariel. And Ariel has a friend named Yoav from preschool. And Yoav's mother, has been talking to Israeli media about how she has been talking to Yoav since last October 7th about Ariel, and whether Ariel is going to be coming home, whether that Ariel has died, and what all this means. And a lot of it has been shared in Israeli media, and it is so heartbreaking to read. So Daniel Gorda shares some of it. Go to Times of Israel. You can read a more extensive detail of Yoav's mother and her interview with Israeli press about this. Daniel Gordis only brings some of it here. So Ariel Bibas's best friend, we're told, is a little boy named Yoav. I don't know anything about him other than what's in this Facebook post, which has gone viral in Israel. So this is Ariel Bibas, the red-headed boy, and this is Yoav. Okay? And here they are playing in their preschool playground. And he wrote a note. So this is what this post says in English translation. Yoav, 5 years old, waited a year and a half for his best friend Ariel Bibas. He wrote him letters, saved a Batman costume for him for Purim, and kept asking, when is Ariel coming back from Gaza? When his parents had to tell him that his friend would not be returning alive, he looked at them and said with the simplicity of a 5-year-old, my heart hurts. Can you imagine that? A 5-year-old is able to say something like that. Then he refused to accept it. If he's coming back in a coffin, maybe he's standing inside it, which means he's still alive. He's still alive, Mommy. You didn't understand correctly. Because if Ariel is a halal, this is the mind of an Israeli boy and his understanding of Hebrew. Halal, it can mean a fallen soldier. So if Ariel is a halal, a fallen soldier, that is someone who dies in battle, it means he's flying in space. Because space, outer space, is also the word halal, spelled the exact same way. Chet lamed lamed. So chet lamed lamed can mean a fallen soldier. It could also mean outer space. So little Yoav is saying, if Ariel is a halal, it means he's flying in space. He can't die. In Israel, there are very smart people, right, Mom? So maybe they can invent a special potion that will bring Ariel and Kafir, the baby brother of Ariel, back to life. So then he goes on, if only we could all be 5-year-olds, if only we could believe that there are fixes to things that can't be repaired, solutions to catastrophes that are nothing less than disasters. If only we adults could summon up the kind of naivete that would allow us to avoid confronting what we know to be true. We are at war not with mere enemies, we are at war with utter savages. Not human beings who are capable of savagery, just savages, irredeemable savages. All right, so I just want to stop here for a second to say, yes, I think it's natural to understand that that's what Hamas is. And this is, I don't mean to sound like a bleeding heart liberal progressive person here, but I do mean to sound like somebody who's trying to figure out how to still be ethical and moral throughout the whole thing. How do I maintain my ethical and moral religious values while under siege by monsters? So what does it do to, like, if we have a perception that the enemy is savages, how will that affect our ability to make peace with them when the fighting is over? And how does it affect does it affect our stereotype of every Palestinian? Like, in other words, if we say Hamas are savages and they are monsters, does that then spill over to say that all Palestinians are monsters and savages? Okay, so just think about how black people in America were referred to for hundreds of years, and how long it has taken for black people to achieve uh, civil rights in America, right? Because of the imagery that was perpetrated and carried out and written about and drawn and depicted in movies, right? People dressing up in blackface, etc., etc. So the more and the longer that we have those images, just think about what Nazi Germany did in terms of caricatures of Jews. They weren't the first ones to do it. The caricatures of us over the centuries have made it such that people have in mind a perception of the other based on what is written about them. So, yes, Hamas is evil. I'm not denying that. I'm just opening for us to think about, if we call them savages and we keep on calling them savages, what does it do to us in terms of how we understand the other, the enemy, and how we can potentially make peace with them? Okay? So, my mother used to tell me that she remembered precisely where she was when she heard that FDR had died. And I, of course, remember where I was when I heard about the Challenger, about the Twin Towers, about Princess Diana. And I imagine that I will always remember precisely where I was when I read that it wasn't Shiri Bibas who was in that coffin. I stared at the screen in utter disbelief. The possibility of that sort of diabolical evil had never even occurred to me. But of course, when it is savages, you never hit rock bottom. Even when you might imagine that there is nowhere deeper for the diabolical mind to go, that's only because you're not diabolical. We can't even imagine these things, but they can. They do, and they always will. All right, so so I'm sharing Daniel Gordis's article. He's an academic. So we would imagine academics to be neutral, to be objective, to write in a way that is more value laden. But here he is, as a Jew who has made Aliyah to Israel with his family, has been in Israel for 40 or so years, is part of the Israeli society, and he says they always will. They always will stoop low because they are diabolical. So he's already in that mindset of these are monsters. We have to destroy the monster. There's no sense in talking to them because you can't talk to monsters. The innocent, vulnerable Bibas children were not shot, but were killed by someone with bare hands. Yes, that was the IDF released some forensic information about how they died, and you can't imagine. So Hamas was saying that they were killed in an Israeli airstrike, and they were just killed when the building toppled on top of them. And forensic studies showed that that was not the case, and that these children were killed by somebody's bare hands. So just think about that evil. Who kills children? Who in the world could possibly Did they murder the children in front of Shiri? Did they let her live a day or two with those images? We'll likely never know. But her husband and their father will never ever stop wondering. And then it turns out that they also brutally murdered Shiri too, whatever that actually means. One shudders to think. And then they bring two hostages who are not being released to watch the sickening ceremony, which hopefully Israel has put an end to. Who would think of that, right? That Times of Israel reported that as well, that Hamas brought two other hostages who are still alive to watch the ceremony of other hostages being released. That's just sick. It's just sick. We're tempted to ask what is wrong with these people, but of course, these are not really people. This is a different, irredeemable species. So I just want to point out, not only is he depicting them as other, different from us, and not just different kind of human being, they're a different kind of species, right? You know, the depictions of Jews over the years, we look like animals, we look like monkeys, we look like apes, right? So if we're made to not look like human beings, if we're made to not look like other Germans or other Europeans or Americans or whatever it is, if we don't look like them, then we're different, and then anything goes in how we as Jewish people are treated. So the same thing now, Daniel Gordis is saying about Hamas. This is a different, irredeemable species. So I'm just saying the danger that this does to our value system when we write things like this. Okay, it's one thing to talk about what they have done is evil and despicable and irredeemable, but to talk about the people themselves as being irredeemable, an irredeemable species. For many Israelis, this week was a Rubicon. We've crossed it, and there's no going back, because Ariel is not in space. He's dead. He was murdered by someone with bare hands, with his brother, with his mother. The impossibility of our situation is reflected in the polls. The majority of Israelis want us to bring back every single hostage, and the majority of Israelis want us to eradicate this evil permanently, entirely. And the likelihood is that neither of those is going to happen. The people I know and talk to can't speak. They pace around rooms, unable to think, unable to write, unable to work, unable to sleep. We wake up in the middle of the night, then we remember, and drowning in unfettered rage, find that it's utterly impossible to go back to sleep. There is just nothing to say. There are no words. Even tears don't help. The only thing that might help would be being 5 years old again. And that's not going to happen either. So there's that, and then there's all of that. Just there, I don't know what else I can say about this revenge and the effect that Daniel Gordis's words, and this is an academic, this is an American living in Israel, a moderate American living in Israel, not somebody who moved to Israel to the West Bank. So it's not a far right person. So what October 7th has done is cause moderate people to become more right and left people to become more moderate and more right. So today, even though those of liberal politics in Israel were a minority on October 6th, they are even a smaller minority today. So nobody in their right mind is talking publicly about a two-state solution anymore. Okay, so there's just been a shift. And that's just natural when you're fighting the enemy like this. No sense in talking about peace. You can't even think about it yet. But then the evil, so this isn't a regular war. that Israel has been waging against Hamas, and that Hamas has been waging against Israel. This is just it's a war against terrorism. It's a war against evil, and just the impact that has had on society, on the psyche of Israelis, on the values of Israelis, on the moral and ethical principles of Israelis. It's going to take a long time to recover from that, and a long time then to even a longer time to be able to be in a position to say we're ready to make peace. So there's another element here that he brings up too. So this is another hostage that was released. This guy sitting here on the couch in the black shirt, looking gaunt. There was a strange headline in Ynet a few days ago. So that's another news outlet from Israel that you could get. I don't read Ynet. I only read Times of Israel. Tal Shoham's wife, so this is Tal Shoham, waiting to meet him on Shabbat morning, wrote a post in which she said, Hine pe'amecha krevim, behold, your footsteps are approaching. So literate Israelis would know that as a reference to a poem from before the State of Israel was established. There was a lot of poets living in Israel who have made Aliyah to Israel. Chaim Nachman Bialik, Leah Goldberg, Rachel, Natan Alterman, a bunch of poets at that time who wrote about the experience of moving to Israel, living in Israel, living on a kibbutz, being part of creating a country, and that has become part of the Israeli cultural experience. It's like, I don't know, they're like Yankee Doodle Dandy, and I don't know, other songs like this that are quintessential America. Take Me Out to the Ball Game, quintessential American songs or poems that are just part of American culture that we all learn that's part of American history, that is just, if you made a reference to it, everybody would know what it is. So when she quotes Hine pe'amecha krevim, behold, your footsteps are approaching, it's a quote from a poem that every literate Israeli is supposed to know. It was such an Israeli post, and then such an Israeli headline, because those three words, Hine pe'amecha krevim, behold, your footsteps are approaching, are a quote from a classic Israeli poem by the iconic poet Leah Goldberg. The official name of the poem is Deep in the Dew, but it's usually referred to by its opening line, a basket full of stars. And this is, so I'll just read it. Tene male kochavim. So I read it once through with the English translation. So a basket full of stars. Reach dishaim dovavim. The smell of the grass, so dovavim, whispering. The smell of the whispering grass, amok, is deep. Amok batal, so it's deep in dew, but it's translated here as mist. Poem levavi, my heart beats. Hine pa'amecha krevim, so the same word, poem, for a beating heart. Pe'amecha, this is your footsteps. Here your footsteps are getting closer. Here ido ribo revivim, tens of thousands they have shaken tens of thousands of raindrops. Amok batal poem levavi. Deep in the mist, my heart is beating. So let me read it better with the English translation. A basket full of stars, the scent of whispering grasses, deep in the mist, my heart beats. Behold, your footsteps are approaching. They shook countless raindrops, deep in the mist, my heart beats. Right, so it's a beautiful poem about anticipating somebody coming. Is it her lover? Is it a long-lost friend, relative, whatever it is? The entire poem is made up of 22 words. All right, so 22 Hebrew words, 22 letters in the alphabet. Is that a metaphor for the Hebrew language itself, which has 22 letters? I don't know. But something about the poem, the yearning, the longing, the heart exploding with the anticipation of something as simple as footsteps, has caught the imagination of the Israeli people for decades. Though none of the musical renditions of the poem have made the poem into one of those songs that all Israelis know, it has been put to music in very different ways by some of Israel's greatest musical artists. On this week of paralyzing sadness and rage, maybe the solution is not to stew in front of the screen, imagining that we're going to wipe them out, because we're not, because doing so would require us to be what we rightly refuse to become. Perhaps the better response is to simply listen to some of the renditions of a poem about a person just desperately waiting for footsteps, both to get a sense of how the poem has spoken to some of Israel's great musical talents over the decades, and to remind ourselves that the story of our people, the story of our state, has been a story of waiting, hoping, praying for something better. So I listened to part of one. Let's see. Just 3 minutes. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share this evening. Any thoughts or comments or questions that you have? Yeah, Bob, unmute.
No,
Yeah,
I did. You have to somehow, and even it's difficult because we're sitting here,
right,
not there, but we got to somehow differentiate between Hamas and Palestinians.
right. No,
And
absolutely, and that hasn't. So I'm not sure that Daniel Gordis. It's not fair to Daniel Gordis. I would imagine that he does, and I think that most Israelis do. But I think for a lot of Israelis now, the line is blurred between Hamas and Palestinians. In that, I think most Israelis would say a Palestinian, you just have to push a Palestinian a little bit, and they become a terrorist without a problem. So that I think most Israelis would agree about that. They wouldn't give the average Palestinian the benefit of the doubt that they actually are a peace seeking or a neutral party, that they assume that all Palestinians are supporters of terrorism to some degree.
We've always been painted with a broad brush. All Jews do X,
Right.
and we can't do the same.
I
But
agree. I
but
agree with you. I agree with you. And I'm
but
saying that even before October 7th,
yeah,
yeah, well, first of all, with a far right government, the opportunity for or the desire to make peace went away when Netanyahu was elected and he formed the far right government. So, but there wasn't enough of a sentiment in Israel to say, okay, enough already with the fighting. We need to seek peace. There just wasn't enough of a groundswell for that. And now, now everything, any kind of advancement towards that idea of making peace has gone by the wayside. And I think a part of that could be the Palestinian people's fault in that Abbas, as the so-called president of the Palestinian Authority, did he once say anything to reject anything about what Hamas did on October 7th? So if there was something by some leading official in the Palestinian Authority that would have countered the evil of Hamas, maybe Israel could be thinking that there's some hope, but there's nothing. There is nothing. So that just makes this whole thing, it makes it that much more difficult to maintain a sense of a sense of humanity, a sense of morality and ethics in the face of this evil. So again, like you said, Bob, we're 6,000 miles away. I have no idea what I would do if I was living in Israel. My son and daughter-in-law are planning to move to Israel next fall. And so, I mean, he's going to be a student. They're too old to go into the army, but still, our hearts are on our sleeves as we um, worry about that. Already, we are people who care about Israel a lot, but again, we're 6,000 miles away, and even from a distance, we know and we see in the Jewish media here in America about reactions to Hamas, and they're very similar to what Daniel Gordis has said. There are voices for peace, but then in the midst of war, a voice for peace could be seen as the voice of the enemy. How can you talk about peace in the midst of this war when the war isn't over yet? So it's very, very complicated um, complicated discussion. So
or the expression "where one stands depends on where one sits."
yes, definitely that's part of it. That's definitely part of it. All right, let's stop. Go ahead, Lori. We'll end with
Oh,
your
yeah,
comment.
just a quick comment, and
Yeah.
it's echoes what you said. I just don't think it's debatable whether someone's a human being or not. That's all.
I
It's just not
understand.
debatable. And that doesn't mean I can't understand the pain that could lead to those expressions, but it's just not objectively debatable, and it's a dangerous line of thinking.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And you just wonder about psychopathic serial killers and how they are treated within the justice system if they're not killed in the process of capturing them. If they, you know, uh, how does one refrain from not calling them a monster, treating them like a monster instead of treating them like a human being? Okay, so I'm comparing the Hamas terrorist to a psychopathic killer. This is clearly someone who is not acting in the typical human way that human beings are supposed to act. So how do you deal with a human being that is acting atypically, especially acting in a violent, psychopathic way, right? And so it's difficult. It is difficult to treat such a person as still a human being and to see them as a human being. And that's the challenge that's a
Mhm.
challenge that we have at this time. And so it's not just one psychopathic killer, that has done that is a serial killer. This is a wave
Well,
of such.
unfortunately, it's the human condition that there's a
How we respond to evil is
well, and that Hitler was a human being. I mean, I hate to say that, but I
right,
mean,
but
to say someone's not a human being, it's facing the reality of this is what people can do.
okay. So then,
Yeah.
um, I think what comes to mind about this is how Israel dealt with Adolf Eichmann and
Mm.
brought him to trial, right? So there you go. So here was the robot, the engineer of the final solution for Hungarian Jews being brought to Auschwitz, right? That was Eichmann's major job. So what did Israel do? So Israel was able to send Mossad agents to Argentina, find him and capture him. Now, they could have just shot him dead, right? And they would have been well in their right to do that. That certainly could have been seen as justice. But no, Israel did, as a counterpoint to the evil of Nazi Germany and Hitler's ideology. Here is the democratic state of Israel standing on values. We're going to capture him and bring him to trial. And this is what humane, democratic, just societies do. And I'm sure many Holocaust survivors and many in Israel would have said, just shoot the guy. What are we wasting Israel's money for on a trial for this monster? But the point is, you had to do it to show this is what human beings do. And he was executed, and he's the only person in the history of Israel to be executed for capital crime committed. So, yeah, so there's that. So you're able to do that, okay? And it looks better that Eichmann is wearing a suit and a tie while he's in justice, but then look what Hamas terrorists look like and how they're dressed. So I'm just saying it's just very, very difficult, very, very challenging to remain humane, ethical, and moral when we are being bombarded by evil. Okay, so our humanity is tested when we're bombarded by evil. And so our instinct might be to revert to our animal nature. So how do we ensure that we don't become animals in the face of evil? Okay, and that's the challenge, and that's one of the things I'll never forgive Hamas for, is that Hamas has forced us to be animals, or to confront our animal nature. All right, we'll stop here and hope everybody can have a restful evening, and we'll see each other again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.